I'm Melissa Long, and I'm the program director for the team in Boston.
How is it like starting Boy the Ball, starting Love Your City in a new community over the past year?
Yeah. Um, it's been a lot of things. I think first of all, I don't think I fully knew what I was getting myself into,
Yeah.
and what it would be like. I was really captured by just the idea of what Love Your City was and what it could grow into. And so then walking into Boston, I had a lot of just hope and excitement for what it could be. Boots on the ground, actually building and growing towards that. It was harder than I expected because I think I've had to learn a lot of things about like it's one thing to have this massive vision, but how do you actually break that down into like the first step and then the second step, like towards like reaching that longer term thing. I think some of it was trial and error in a sense. But I think that's kind of in some ways just what following the Lord looks like. Of you might be going in one direction thinking that that's where he's taking you, but then he actually ends up like pointing you in another direction, and then it ends up being really fruitful and growing into something. And I think that's kind of what it was like starting something in Boston. I think I had a couple of rough pieces of like we knew kind of the community where there was openness for it, and some key community and organization leaders to get to know. And so I kind of just started there, of building relationships with those partners. I think one of the like most significant things that really swung the door open for launching Love Your City in the community was a conversation I had with the woman who she I think is one of the project managers for this housing community. Um, and I'd had a meeting with her and just felt really strongly that I needed to tell her that we actually needed to go into the buildings to knock on people's doors, which is something feels a little taboo-ish of like I just needed to be careful who I said that to because it might freak people out.
Mhm.
But that I think was just the thing that she needed to hear because then it unlocked something for her. And she then invited us to have this or to be at a community event. She offered us a conference room whenever we needed it. And then she also gave us her blessing and support to do this.
That's good.
Um, and so then we launched the walkthroughs, and I think the trial and error piece came in with how do you actually then communicate this vision to other people? Um, when you're starting in a new community, do you just go to the same building every single week, or is it better to kind of have relationships forming in multiple different places? And so um, the Lord, I think, really worked on both of those things and led me and like the growing team in both of those things. And at first, it wasn't really growing, but then I shifted and pivoted towards more of what he was saying, and then it just exploded. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. It's been
Yeah.
cool to see even through the pictures, like I can see how
Hmm.
things are growing and how things are changing.
Hmm.
And you can see just like there's so much life even through the pictures that I can just tell like
Hmm.
something's happening. So that's
Hmm.
been cool to see.
What are you really seeing in those communities that you're working in? What are you seeing the young people facing?
Yeah. A lot of things. So in the specific neighborhood where we're working, there's a history of violence. And one that over recent years has gotten better. But it still exists and is present. And there's also just a lot of negative things that young people could fall into, like gang activity, drug activity, that sort of thing. And so overall, it's just created this culture of fear for young people, but then also for their parents. And so then one thing that we've seen young people facing just as we've been there is that their parents don't really want to let them just be outside in the community or be around in the community unless they're actually with them. Um, because they're really afraid that they might fall into one of those things that would hurt them. And so then what you see happening is there's, I think, maybe like two or three options for young people. They either are stuck inside in their apartments, Their parents take them out to do a bunch of different activities in places that aren't in their own community, or they get put into programs, which, yeah, like the programs and going out and doing things in the community or like around the city, I think are good. But then I think what you probably see more often is young people just being stuck inside. Um, I think they're also facing that their parents are working a lot. There was one mom that we met who she's working 2 jobs and she like sometimes works overnight. So that can really impact a young person of maybe having a parent who isn't fully supported in the way that would really help them, and then it kind of bleeds into the way that they care for their kids. Yeah, I think those really are kind of the 2 big things that we're seeing.
Yeah. I guess now I kind of want to go back to like your story and what happened there. But what was the thing that drew you into Boy with the Ball initially?
Yeah. So and you might know some of this. My background is actually in immunology and infectious disease. That's what my degree was in. Thought I was going to work in a career in science. And the summer before my senior year, I was working full-time in a research lab and realized one day that what I loved about it was getting to know the people I was working with. And then over time, over the course of about a year, the Lord really was showing me all the things that He'd been doing in my heart, and how the thing that really made me come alive was people, and how that's really what I was passionate about. But most of the things that I was doing in science were really disconnected from that. So I wanted to do something where I could really like put that passion and like put the ways that He had equipped me, like put all of that to work to really love and care for people. So it first started with that heart, but then also He had developed this passion in me for loving and caring for people who don't have anyone alongside them, who might care to know the surface level things happening in their life, but then also the things that are harder. And so as I was then kind of taking all of that and looking for kind of what was next for me after college, I'd landed on nonprofits focused on youth and community youth development and education.
Yeah.
And I was really looking for one where the focus was, yes, providing a service and like reaching certain outcomes, but then also one where the focus was really also on using that to really just know people and be alongside people. And so there were a lot of really great organizations that I saw, but I felt like a lot of them were really missing the relational piece. And so then when I found Boy with a Ball, it was just all of the things that I had been wanting and that I had been hoping for. And it really was the relational piece that got me, of how it's like, yes, we want to help young people reach their dreams and see all of these things happen for young people, but then also like we want to walk alongside them so that their hearts can be well and so that they won't break and shatter. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you first join like a walkthrough or Velocity, or what was your first kind of touch with that?
Well, I was in Pennsylvania when I found Boy with a Ball. And I actually went right through, I needed a job, and so I applied for a job. So my like first touch with Boy with a Ball actually was virtually, just over calls with the global team, and yeah, just in interviews and in screening for them screening me for a position. But then it led to me fundraising to come on staff and then coming and training at the headquarters in Atlanta. So
really your first touch was like wanting to start a team. That was something that wow, that was cool.
I guess.
Yeah. So you just kind of went through the application process and then came here for training?
Yeah. And I was there for 3 months, and then moved to Boston to start a team.
Wow, very cool. What was your first walkthrough like as you were in training?
Oh man. I don't, okay, I don't remember the first Saturday that I came,
Mhm.
but I do remember one of the first times being in the community because it actually was a really significant moment for me. I remember I think I was with Maria and Carol and we were going to do some kind advertise something like hand out flyers or something, I think is what we were doing. And so a lot of it was just observing what was happening and just the way that they were talking to people and um, all of that. But then I remember this one conversation um, where one of so the community member we were talking to, she um, wasn't doing super well health-wise and actually kind of like fainted while we were with her. And she just wasn't doing okay and she started crying. And so then we prayed for her and just made sure she was okay before we left. But I think that was just a really powerful moment of like a powerful moment of ministry. And it was my first ever walkthrough. It was kind of wild. But then also the one of the things that really struck me from being in that community was just how the Lord had equipped me to be there. Of when I was walking into Boy with a Ball, one, but then also this walkthrough. Um, I didn't know that Spanish was going to be helpful, and the Lord had actually been doing something in my life for the last probably ever since I was in third grade. He's been working on me in Spanish and just instilling that passion in my heart. Um, and I'd always been really passionate about learning it, so I kept learning it, and then and never really knowing how it would be helpful or useful. Um, but then I'm here in this community, the door opens to conversations in Spanish, and I realized that I can actually understand what's happening and participate in it, and that I'd been equipped for this very thing. Um, so I think that's kind of how the first walkthrough was
Yeah.
of getting to see a significant moment of ministry, but then also seeing how just what the Lord had been doing in my heart and in my life, how that overlapped with like the story of what he's doing within Boy of the Ball as a whole, but then also for me personally.
Yeah. How was like the first walkthrough when you actually went into the new community that you're at?
Mm-hmm. It was really exciting. It was, it felt just like a natural transition point of over the summer, or I and whatever volunteers I could find, we'd been going to these cookouts that were happening every week in the community. And so as those were ending, it just seemed like the natural starting point that kind of the week after they ended that we would start the walkthroughs. And so I just gathered two of my friends from church, and then we had one other volunteer slash team member at the time. And so the four of us went, and it honestly felt like just kind of like riding a bike. Like I hadn't gone on a walkthrough by at that point, probably in like 3 or 4 months.
Oh, wow.
No, it had been more than that.
Hmm.
6, 5, about 5 months.
Wow.
So it felt really good to get back into the rhythm of doing a walkthrough. I can't remember every conversation, or there really weren't any conversations that stood out to me, I think, from that first day. But I think overall what we saw was openness as we were there from people.
I guess as you've been working in the community in Boston, what kind of change and transformation have you seen with the work that you're doing?
Yeah. I think at this moment it's hard to say like how like big picture the change that we're seeing in the community on a larger scale. Um, this is actually something that I've been thinking about that I need to grow in being able to see. But just this idea that Love Your City is built on a bunch of individual moments of ministry with people, but then all of that builds into this bigger picture of seeing how the Holy Spirit is able to work in every corner of a community, but then also how those individual moments lead to big picture transformation. Um, what I can tell you is a little bit of how us being in the community has impacted individual people. There was this one really cool story of this. We knocked on this woman's door for the first time. We start talking to her, learning about her and her dreams and what she wants to do. And then she shares how I was kind of we were asking her like, okay, you have these dreams, kind of what's in the way for you? And she was saying how uh, she had gotten her GED, but she lost the paperwork for it. And so the barrier was like having the paperwork for it so that she could then apply for college and stuff. Um, and so then kind of just after we were finishing, well, we finished up our conversation and she was like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. Like, I think I'm going to take the step and go get this paperwork.
Yeah.
And she even shared too how she knew Jesus and how she had been praying just about her dreams and what was next for her, and how she felt like us coming was an answer to that prayer. At least that's what it seemed like. And so then, in the weeks that followed, we were able to hear that she had made the call and things were in process for her to get that paperwork. And then a couple weeks later, we heard that she had a trip planned where she was gonna actually go. She had to go pick them up in person, I think, like in New York, where she was actually gonna go pick them up. And so we really didn't do much of anything. We kind of just showed up and said, "Hey, we're here."
Yeah.
And extended friendship to her, and then things have just been rolling for her. There's another family who towards the end of last year just moved to the US from the DR and are just facing a lot as they're working to get their lives established here. And in talking with the mom, she had been mentioning how she had this lawyer appointment coming up, and we asked her to let us know how it was or how it went after it happened. And she then just said, well, do you want to go into it with me? And we were like, absolutely, yes, we do. And so we ended up not being able to physically go into the appointment with her, but I was able to drive her to it. And then that kind of led to being able to, me and another volunteer being able to take her to some different things, which just made resources in the city more accessible to her. And has really helped just provide some foundational things that her and her family need to kind of get their lives started here. Yeah, I'd say those are kind of the two things that are coming to mind of just individually how how we've been able to impact people or see impact happen for people.
As you've been working in the community and getting started with a new Boy football location, what kind of challenges have you felt like you faced?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there have been a good number of challenges. I think one of them has actually been being able to keep up with the level at which things are growing. And in these recent weeks, I've really started to see, well, one, the need for a team, but then two, how the capacity or how the work is growing beyond the capacity of just one staff person. So that's exciting to be in this place where it's growing so much that we need more people. I think also just the another challenge has been building a team, but not necessarily in the sense of attracting people to it. There's something really interesting happening where like me and this other young professional guy, we are the Boy with the Ball team right now. But then and so we've been meeting to pray and like start talking about the forgotten pieces and really seek the Lord together. And I think one of the challenges has been like for me as a leader, how do I lead someone else into like learning about these pieces, but then actually living them out in their lives. So like seeing a team grow in the forgotten pieces, I think has been a challenge. but and then it's interesting too though to see that the Lord really has brought a couple of people around this work kind of consistently where there's like me and this one team member, but then there's also I'd say like 3 to 4 other core volunteers who are really a part of it and have the capacity to be on the team. It's just the timing and just how the Lord would have it, I think, is a little different. So I think just navigating those beginning dynamics of a team has been a little bit challenging. I think also it's been challenging to seek the Lord, if that makes sense, just because of how many things there are to seek him about. But then also like everything is new and is an opportunity to hear him and is an opportunity where like we need his direction and everything. And so, yeah, I'm not really sure like what more to say about that.
Yeah.
Except that like every place feels like uncharted territory.
Mm.
And so I guess it is a battle between like not letting feelings overtake or not letting it become overwhelming, but instead like how can I and the people around me, how can we stay as a team like close to the Lord, and instead of looking at all of these things as overwhelming things, just kind of look at him and say, great, how are you going to do this? Because the only way that it's going to work is if you do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And then what kind of advice would you give to someone who wanted to start getting involved with Love Your City? And how might they be able to implement it into their lives?
Well, I would say for actually being part of Love Your City, the easiest way to touch it and get an idea for it would be to go on a Saturday. But to not show up just as this thing that you're doing, but showing up with expectations for how you yourself might grow, or for just what things it brings up in your heart as you're encountering people who are facing things that maybe are different from you, or maybe even things that are the same as you. But then also like thinking about how like as you're going, how it's revealing more about what your purpose is and showing you things that like really make you light up and make you come alive. So there's deep internal work and deep internal perspective to have going into it, but the easiest thing to do is to just do it and show up on a Saturday. And then I would say for actually loving your city, like outside of a Boy with a Ball outreach or a Boy with a Ball activity, Boy with a Ball has this I would say model or approach that is a coach, a team, and a playing field. So having someone above you who's growing in the things that you want to grow in. For Boy with a Ball, it's like growing in the 5 forgotten pieces. For someone who is knowing and following Jesus, it's someone who's further ahead in knowing and following Jesus. Then also having a core team of people who like also are hungering to grow in the same things and kind of do something similar mission wise. And then the third thing would be to have like a playing field where you're actually living it out. And so I would say if you want to live your city in your school, you could grab a bunch of friends together who also want to be missional in their school. Like missional in terms of just like letting the Lord lead them into relationships with other people, being really intentional about friendships with people, like really just wanting to see X, Y, or Z happen like in their school. Then it would be important to have other people who see that too, so that you can like go into it together, but then also so you can talk about how it's going and come up with ideas together. But then it's important to also have like that playing field of like, okay, what are you actually doing in your school? One of my friends that I met this summer, she's a college student, and she was talking about how she really wants to reach her sorority. And so then I kind of just brought this idea to her of, I guess, coach team playing field. We didn't talk about a ton about the coach part, but like I was asking her if there were other people in her sorority who knew Jesus who like also really have a heart for like reaching the other people in her sorority. And then I said, great. Well, one, you should talk to them about it and tell them what your heart is. But then two, you should start meeting together to pray about that. And then like go either individually or together into like having conversations with people and just like building friendships. And then talk about how it's going. And so I think, yeah, I think that could be true of like your sports team or your job, like having someone who's on the same page as you that you can go into it with, but then also just being really open to just like who you should be getting to know as you're in those different playing fields and like what it looks like to really be relational and love them and care for them. And even be led by the Lord into doing all of those things in like every area of your life.
Yeah, that's great. And then our last question is just if you could give like one piece of advice to a young person, what would it be?
Oh man. I would say to really pay attention to the things that you really like doing. Not necessarily hobby wise, but like as you're in school learning about something, or as you're maybe even when you're in college, like as you're just living your life, like taking stock of the things that you're doing that really give you life, that you really get excited about. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I think it was actually the Boy with the Ball podcast.
Yeah.
And it mentioned something about how, like sometimes when you do things, you can really like sense and feel the Lord's pleasure as you're doing it. So make sure that you do a ton of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times coming alive to, or just noticing like what you come alive to and doing those things can unlock pieces of your purpose. Like I really invested in Spanish because it was something that made me come alive. And now it's been brought full circle moment where the Lord's really using it for something. So yeah, just really digging deep into the things that get you really excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.